Hey guys, welcome back to Top 10 Gaming. I'm Ron Mackenzie LaFergie. There are a lot of video games out there, and some of them are just groin-grabbingly amazing. Sometimes you'll get a game and just not turn it off for ages as you're transported into another world, loving the game and enjoying your time on it. But other times you buy a game and it turns out it's a piece of crap. In this video I'll focus on those times. So get ready, it's time for the top 10 worst games of all time. Number 10. Shaq Fu. As with most forms of entertainment that tried to cash in on Shaq's fame, this game was quite the turd. It was so bad that it made Kazam and Steel look like The Godfather and Goodfellas. What was so bad about it? Well, rather than putting the famous basketball player in, a basketball game, it went in another direction and had Shaq using martial arts to rescue a boy. Now of course this was done to cash in on the popularity of fighting games in the early 90s, but this was no Street Fighter. The controls were terrible and far too difficult to succeed with, and the concept itself was kinda dumb. But the worst part, it came with a single from Shaq's rap album, Shaq Fu: The Return. Oh, the humanity! Number 9. PACMAN for Atari. Now, hold on, don't worry, I'm not saying that PACMAN is a bad game. It's a classic and it holds a well-earned spot in gaming history. However, when they tried to bring it to the Atari 2600, they failed to realize that the system just wasn't powerful enough to run it. The colors were all wonky, the ghosts flickered in and out, the maze itself was simplistic and different from the original. It wasn't great. And not that they expected a ton back in 1982, but this failed even by those standards. Part of the problem was that the original Pac-Man was just so popular and people were expecting the home version to live up to the arcade, which just wasn't in the cards. Too bad for them, I'll stick with my Skyrim. Number 8. The Guy Game. Oh man, this game is so much worse than you ever could have expected. So on the face of it, it just kinda looks like a weird misogynistic version of Family Feud. You basically just try to either guess if the sexy lady on spring break got the answer right or wrong, and if you're right, you see her boobs. Or else you're told she got it wrong and try to guess the wrong answer that she gave, and then you see her boobs. Super classy! But it gets even classier because it turns out one of the girls in the game was only 17 when she was videotaped. A misogynistic game with naked underage girls? Not so good. Apparently she sued the studio saying that she wanted to be active in her community and church. Now, I totally get not wanting to have your life ruined, but call me crazy, if you're hoping to be active in the church, step 1 might be not pulling your tits out on camera. But that's just me. Number 7. Vampire Reign. Vampire Reign was an Xbox 360 stealth game where you're trying to make your way through the city without being killed by vampires. This sounds pretty familiar, stealth games aren't exactly new. What sets this one apart is that it's often seen as one of the worst reviewed games ever for the Xbox 360. This game really doesn't seem to have any redeeming qualities. Lousy controls, poor quality, but worst of all, it was incredibly frustrating to deal with the vampires. You'd be sneaking along minding your own business, but if one saw you, you were basically dead. You couldn't really hide once they spotted you, and they'd give you a smack to immobilize you, then another to kill you. You can find this for as little as $1 in some places, and it's honestly only worth $1 if you just want to laugh at how bad it is. Number 6. AQUAMAN: Battle for Atlantis. This game was insanely disappointing to fans of AQUAMAN. First, the graphics and controls were just terrible, considering it was for the Xbox. I would have guessed it was for the N64 based on how it looks, which is pretty telling. Plus, you know how most people hate water levels? Well, here, have a whole game of water levels. I'm not saying AQUAMAN shouldn't take place in the water, but I hate water levels so much that it makes me hate it even more. This game was just consistently slammed by reviewers with bad controls, poor graphics, uninteresting story, no animation or voices in the cutscenes. It had it all. Or rather, it lacked it all. Number 5. Drake of the 99 Dragons. Man, I'd never heard of this game, but after looking into it, holy cow does it look awful. This is a third-person shooter for the Xbox and it was just painful. Camera was so hard to control that you often couldn't even see what you were supposed to be looking at. The graphics were lame, the voice acting was lousy, and they used a bunch of stock sounds from frickin' AOL Instant Messenger. Plus, it used a terribly aimed dual-wield system that led to so many hilarious-looking videos. Consistently receiving 1 or 2 out of 10, this is definitely a game to pass on. Number 4. Limbo of the Lost. The development of this game began in 1993. When was it released? 2008. But hey, maybe they just needed time to create a whole new world. That takes a lot of time. Oh wait, never mind, it turns out they just frickin' plagiarized most of it. Players noticed that certain places in the game looked identical to areas from Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Then once they started looking into it, people began noticing that a bunch of the game was plagiarized. They stole assets from other games like World of Warcraft and even had a scene and dialogue from the Spawn movie. So they spent 15 years just stealing stuff from other games and movies. Then the creators blamed other people and faded into the sunset. Classy. But not quite as classy as the musical number at the end of the game. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. A do-ups, a dooby-doo-ups, a do-ups, a dooby-doo-ups. Number 3, Superman 64. Problem with crapping out a game to cash in on the popularity of a comic book character is if the game is bad, you'll have a bunch of pissed off comic book nerds. But this game was so bad that literally everyone was angry, not just the fans who were pissed that it had ruined Superman. It starts by going, if you want to save your friends, solve the maze. And it turns out solving the maze means flying through rings. And then it turns out that was pretty much the whole game. You spend the majority of your time flying around and hitting enemies or going through rings if you can get through the bugs and clunky mechanics. I can't get into everything wrong with this game, just take my word for it, it's poo. Number 2, Big Rigs, over-the-road racing. There's just too much to say about this game that's terrible. Let's start with the gameplay. The point of the game is to race another truck in a checkpoint race, which sounds pretty fun. But issue number 1, the AI truck just won't move. It doesn't go, so you just win automatically. How fun. But hey, at least it's pretty fun to drive around and play, right? Wrong. The controls are terrible. You can drive through everything you shouldn't be able to, and you can't drive over bridges, instead just sinking in. And you can even just fall off the level. Flat Earth confirmed. And also, this game is terrible confirmed. Number 1, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. We all knew this game would be here. Anytime the topic of terrible games comes up, E.T. is inevitably mentioned, and for good reason. This game was so bad that a bunch of copies were collected and buried in the desert. Yes, that actually happened. They were so sure that the game would be great that they made 4 million cartridges. But because of gameplay so bad it was almost unplayable, they sold less than 40% of the cartridges. Now to be fair, the programmer Howard Scott Warshaw had less than 2 months to put it together. So really it was more the fault of whoever decided to give him no frickin' time to make a game, but good googly moogly was this game bad. That's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please smack that thumbs up button and subscribe to Top 10 Gaming for more videos. What's the worst game you've ever played? Let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, I'm Ron Mackenzie LaFergie with Top 10 Gaming. Later gamers.